Hey guys, welcome back to another update from MALEDICTOR. Let's jump on into this one because we got a decent amount added in, and I also have to do a demo for the new arcade game. So, let's jump on into this and try to speed it up a little bit. So first off, we have to start off with the tradition of more sprites. Got a lot of variety with this one. Some are for atmosphere, some are for things like buttons, some are for things like the arcade machine, and everything in between. So got a lot more sprites added in, and I can always stand to make a couple hundred more. So we'll be seeing that update for updates to come. But next up, more models. Should also be seeing this in pretty much every update as well. More models made, things like tables and chairs. Always need a little bit of extra variety with things like that. So it's always good to get those made up and put in because models are really nice. They take up a little more space than sprites. They cast shadows, which look nice. And they're also just one of those things that I can always add into previous levels to kind of expand them out a little bit and make them look a little bit better. So models and sprites are always very nice to get more. Next one, E1M5 visual improvements. That's mostly things like adding a little more texture variation and kind of moving some things around. Not a whole lot, just making it visually look a little bit nicer. So change that up a little bit and it looks much, much better. Fixed some of the models in it. That's actually covered later on in E1M1 touch-ups, but anyway. More sounds. So got quite a few more ambient sounds added in. There's, again, with like sprites and models, I can always stand to make way more, but we're chipping away at what I feel like we need, so that's always nice. Next, more ambient sound systems. So that's separate from more sounds because you've got sounds, which are the actual things that you hear, and then sound systems, which affects how they play. And so some things might just be like a static sound effect that only plays in one section and just kind of has its own attenuation settings. So it might travel farther or might not travel as much. It might fade out at a different distance. But so those are things like the sound systems. And I added in a couple of different ones that I think are a bit more complex, but will make for some interesting effects in this level specifically, but I also did go in and add one in on a previous level. So that should be nice. That's a nice tool to have. E1M1 touch-ups, I mentioned that. Fixed some model stuff, fixed sprite scaling issues. E1M2 touch-ups, like I said, I added in some of the new sound systems into E1M2 and also changed up some of the visuals in certain areas just to make it look a little bit nicer, I think. Next, Sinister Spirits Episode 2. That one's pretty interesting. It's another ghost story. So yeah, I kind of like the ghost stories for Sinister Spirits. I know eventually I'll probably go into things like cryptids with it, but for now, ghosts are fun, and there's no shortage of them. So we got that. That's a radio show for E1M5. Next, we got E1M3's soundtrack in, and it sounds very nice. Guy has been hard at work on the soundtracks and has been really killing it with those, so he's been doing very well, and I'm really enjoying the sounds of them. So we got that put in. Next, we have E1M5 lighting put in. As you can see, if we actually look at our editor here, you can see we have lights. And this level, I think, looks exceptionally nice when you see all the lights that are added in. So it's, I'm very happy with how the lighting is turning out in this level. I'm not 100% sure on how much I'll need to work on optimizations for this level compared to previous levels, because this is, I believe, the largest level I've done so far, and it also requires the most amount of lights. And it's a high light density area in that it's got a lot of rooms, so it kind of needs a lot of lights. But I'm trying to be mindful with them in terms of how far they fade out, how much they overlap one another. I'm really trying to pay attention to attenuation overlaps, because that is one of the bigger aspects of lighting performance, other than, you know, just toggling shadows on or off. So I'm going through, and now that I've got all the lights set up, kind of auditing them. So working on performance for those. So far, you know, the performance doesn't seem bad. I haven't baked the lighting yet or anything, and I haven't set up the actual map itself for lights. So once the lighting actually gets baked, then I'll be able to get a good idea for performance. But I'm always just trying to be mindful of that. Next, we've got more materials added, some special ones, and some just kind of generic, like, you know, new walls and stuff like that. Some of the specialized materials you'll actually see with the arcade game, and you'll be seeing that pretty soon. Next, we have bloom added. Now, I know bloom is kind of a little controversial. We look at our post-processing volume here, though. See, we've got intensity 1 for bloom. That's pretty low. We turn it off. You notice it's a very subtle change in the lighting. You get a little bit more of that bloom effect, which I think looks better for the game because it's all lit by fog. So I think that kind of gives it a much better look. But it also has a nice little effect of things like fire, or like the muzzle flash from your guns looking really nice. So it played up a lot of the lighting effects a lot. Not in a way that it obscures vision or just looks too much. It actually just makes certain things look a little bit more apparent. And so those muzzle flashes, you can feel them. They feel hot. So I really like it. I might tweak it just depending on how things look, but really overall, you can see, you know, it's not a dramatic difference, but it's a nice difference, I think. And I know, like, bloom gets a little bit of a bad rep because when bloom first kind of became a thing, like during the Xbox 360 era, a lot of game devs did it way too much. And, you know, like, you know, a 360 era game would probably do something like this with bloom, to where it is just way too much, and you go in and everything's just glowing. But with just that little bit of a glow, I think it looks really nice. So I'm happy with that. I'm weighing it to be more subtle than anything else, so you don't have to worry about bloom. Next, glow material adjustments. So this ties into bloom a little bit. We've got certain things that glow, like fire, for instance. So let me go ahead and turn this off. If we look at the fire here, you can see, you know, it glows pretty nicely and looks pretty good. But if I turn on the intensity on the bloom, then it starts to glow out a lot more. It's a little less apparent here, but if I go, mostly because the fire doesn't have a whole lot to hit. If we look actually on the inside, where a lot of the light is, then you can see how the red radiates out a little bit more. But if we go into E1M5, where there's a lot more fire, we look at the house, then we can start to see this really take effect with the fire, and makes it look a lot hotter. So I'm extremely happy with how this has changed the fire effect. I think it makes the fire effect look significantly better. And it also makes it to, it also has a nice little benefit of allowing me to kind of shrink down some of the lights, to where they cast less shadows and they overlap with one another a little bit less. So it's a small performance boost. It might be negligible. Who knows? But turning it on and off, I think you can see it adds a much bigger effect to the fire and just makes it look overall better. And so potentially we could see a small performance benefit with an improved visual quality. So anytime you can get those, that's pretty nice. We look next, damaged floor fix. So the issue that I was running into with damaged floors before, if we just go into 5 again, and we go into our blueprints. This is level specific, damaged floor, yeah. So if we look at our code here, it's a lot more complex than it was before. The issue that was happening was that the damaged floors would only affect the first person who entered them. So I essentially had to restructure the damaged floors in order to create a method of keeping track of everybody inside of the floor and apply damage to each of them. And, I tried to make it a little bit more performance-minded as well. Just so when nobody's in the damaged floor, then it's not running pretty much any code at all. So, the damaged floors are more efficient now, and they actually work now. So anybody who is in the damaged floor will take damage. That includes enemies. Because, I much prefer it when enemies are affected by things that affect the player as well. It seems a little more fair that way. And also just kind of gives the player more options. So I think it's more fun that way. Then Holy Ground added, which is a type of damaged floor. There's currently already different types of damaged floors. Like there's just instant damage that can repeat, and then there's fire damage, which hurts you initially and then puts a fire dot on you, a damage over time effect on you for a certain amount of time. But then there is the Holy Ground damaged floor, which only affects enemies, and it's not going to be in many areas of the game. Right now it's only in one, in a very, very specific area. So it could be nice for adding little safe zones in maps in the future. We'll see. I'm not planning on using it a whole lot, but it's basically very similar to the damaged floor, just it does not affect the player, so that's good for the player. But now if we look at our next one, we've got our Space Shot arcade game, which I have named here. I've named it. It says Space Shot in the file, but it's really Invasion. Just toss this on in here. And make sure that we've audio turned on so that you can hear it. Alright, so we've got our Invasion arcade game. Let's jump in and play it. It's a little hard, but...
Stop the invaders!
So, the special material that I was talking about is kind of a glow material that goes on these balls that you're hitting, and also goes on some of these stripes and stuff. So the emissive materials...
Don't worry, Cadet. That torpedo will hit something eventually.
So the glow effects will go on certain things. Mostly, I only have them with the Invasion cabinet right now. But anyway, the Invasion game is fairly simple in concept, but it is again, like all the other games so far, can be played infinitely on 1 credit. The idea is that it, like the other ones, will get harder as you go. So you can see it ends after just a few shots, and every consecutive shot that we land in the yellow and the green shrinks the active zone that we have to hit. If I could manage to actually get this, I can show you. It's essentially made so that when it gets down to where you have to hit one single light, then if you hit it, you get a free ball. Well, not a free ball, but it kind of resets your amount of shots.
Don't worry, Cadet. That torpedo will hit something eventually. Stop the invaders!
So it's kind of hard. I would say it's not anywhere near as hard as Cannon Shot, but it is definitely challenging, and I think it's one of those types of challenging that is, it's kind of an addicting kind of challenging. So, of course, you also get more points for landing in the green lights than the yellow, and you also get a multiplier based on your consecutive shots. But the multiplier does reset once the lights reset. So that means once you get your free shots back after getting a certain amount of combos, then it resets the multiplier as well. But you get a lot of points quick. I promise I'll show you eventually. That's a bug I need to figure out. I'm not entirely sure what causes that, actually. I was still working on this a little bit. Really, it's just finding that one bug. I'm not entirely sure what's causing it.
Now you aliens will have to deal with Rear Admiral Roy.
But the bug is that you'll pull back on the little hammer, you'll let go, and then it just doesn't move the ball at all. I think maybe what's happening is that it's an issue with the impulse, like the physics, because it fires a physics impulse at the back of the ball and shoots it in the direction of the ramp. And the way it settles in, I might have to actually go into the blueprint and show you. So we'll do that after this. Okay. We go into the blueprint here, and you can see it. The ball basically falls into this ramp, or into this little divot here to steady it in the center, so it's not rolling around all over the place. And what I believe happens is that it's sometimes still rolling this way when you hit it, so then it just doesn't go anywhere. I'm not 100% certain. It could just be that maybe the tray is a little too deep. I'll have to mess with it a little bit because it doesn't happen often, so it's very hard to replicate, but, you know, I'll get it fixed. Anyway. That is Invasion. I wish I could manage to get a combo going, but, yeah. Oh well. I don't want to eat up too much time here. But you can see, we have our third arcade game in the game. I want to have 8 total, maybe 7. I'm not entirely sure, because I don't know if I want to have, an arcade game for the boss level. Same with like a radio station. I'm not sure. Maybe. I don't know. Those are going to be for for later to decide once I actually get to the boss level. But for now, I know that I need at least 7. We've got 3. I'm really behind on 2 because I want to make 2 more arcade games and 2 more radio shows for the previous levels that I've already made that don't have them. Radio shows are easy. The arcade games are a little bit more work, but they're a lot of fun, so I don't mind making these. I I just don't think that I'll be able to make 24 of them. I don't think I'll be able to make a unique one for every level in the game. So I am figuring with the arcade games, I'm probably going to wind up recycling them for, episodes 2 and 3. And, each one will just have its unique appearance in each episode. So we've got that, but yeah, the arcade games, still a lot of fun to make, and they're still fun to play. And I think that they'll be a nice source of some extra fun and a little bit of competition for people. I know my testers definitely brag when they beat the high score that I include in the game. So they always have fun with that. So if we look at what we've got next, we've got a spawner added. So I know probably some people are already kind of groaning at the idea of enemy spawners. And I personally do not like enemy spawners myself. But they can be used well. For instance, going into one area and you pass over a trigger, and then it spawns enemies in a different section of the level that you have to go to later, or can do something like open a door that enemies are inside. The spawners are actually really versatile. I've got so far it's not an enemy spawner, it's an effects spawner for a specific atmospheric object, which is the next point after this. The atmospheric object added. So I don't want to spoil what it is, but we do have that. And we've got the spawner added to be able to create them and have them act when you pass by a trigger. So the spawner is nice because I created it to be versatile so that it can affect different things. I can assign it essentially to be something. So kind of a way to describe it will be for enemies, I'll be able to create like enemy stand-ins that do nothing and just kind of exist and sit around in the level, and then the spawner will activate them and they will spawn an enemy based on what they are. So like I can have a pistol spawn a token, essentially place it on the ground, and then when you pass over the trigger for it, then it will just activate that. The token will turn into an enemy. So I'm definitely going to be responsible with that. I hate it when you're playing a shooter game, and I think a lot of Doom maps kind of fall into this category of when you see like an armor shard. If you've ever played Doom WODs, then you'll know a single armor shard just out in the open is basically just you're begging to have enemies get spawned on top of you if you pick it up. So I'm not going to be doing traps like that. The only way I would do something like that is if I make something that like has walls drop down or doors open, something obvious, not just like magically teleporting people on top of you or behind you. You pass through a door and then suddenly you've got an enemy right behind you in a room you just cleared. That's not going to be happening. But I think that the spawners will add a lot more interest into the level design because they'll be able to kind of fill in areas that you've already cleared out and that you might have to backtrack through. So I think that will be a nice improvement. And then finally, we've got our E1M5 soundtrack made, and like the others, sounds very nice. It's unique and is actually specifically made for the level. Guy's one of my testers. He's really enthusiastic about the game, fortunately, and he really has a lot of fun going through the levels, and so he's tailoring these soundtracks specifically for the levels, which means that they fit nicely, and they all sound fairly unique too. So that's really nice. And he's already got ideas for E1M5 soundtrack. I'm just gonna have to show him the map because he doesn't have an active build to run around in. So we'll hopefully have E1M5's soundtrack included in the next update. And yeah, we should be done with E1M5 very, very soon. I pretty much just have to put in enemies and pickups. I've already got the keys put in. I've got the doors set up so that the doors that are locked from keys, they are already assigned to the keys that they use. The ones that are opened with switches, I've got the switches put in and have them assigned correctly. So doors are all good, keys are all good. I just need pickups and enemies, really. So that should be pretty quick. I've got a little bit of... I've got that one little fix for the Invasion arcade game that I need to fix, which hopefully should not be too hard. I've got some more atmospheric things that I want to add in, of course. Plenty of ideas for sprites, so I'm going to be decorating the map a little bit more, I think. But for the most part, E1M5 is pretty much entirely done. And we'll be moving on to E1M6 really soon. And E1M8 is going to be the boss level, so we're nearly done with episode 1, actually. We only really have 2 more normal levels to make, so that's going pretty well. I'm pretty happy with the progress for the game. I'm slowing down a little bit in certain areas, but the areas where I'm slowing down in is, I think, well worth it, because it's things like improving the atmosphere and adding a lot more of kind of a unifying feel to the game, and doing things like adding in, more textures for level variety for the materials, like the walls and the floors. I'm also getting much better, I think, at texturing as well, for getting more interesting interiors. So that's slowing me down a little bit, but I think that the end result is much, much improved over previous levels. So there's going to be a lot of tweaking and stuff, but I am very, very happy with how things are going right now. So feeling very enthusiastic, and morale is very high for this, so that's great. I'm chugging along. So before I wind up talking too much more here, I'm just gonna go ahead and cut this off because we're already 28 minutes in. So everybody, thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys next month and should have some good updates. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a good one.